What is line movement? Why do betting lines even move in the first place? How do you use line movement to know when to place your wagers? We're here today to talk about all of that and much more. Line movement is when odds or a point spread for a game changes from the time the bet opens until the time the game starts. Being able to recognize line movement, even potentially project when line movement could be coming, it's just going to help you get the best possible price on your bets and just give you valuable insights into navigating this entire world of sports betting. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Let's first talk about what a betting line is. The betting line can refer to any type of bet, a point spread, a money line, even an over-under total. Sportsbooks set these betting lines with the intent of maximizing their chance of profit, or really just eliminating their potential downside in a lot of ways, and it comes to a particular side of one of those bets. To put things slightly differently, sportsbooks are always trying to balance the amount of money that's being placed on each side of a betting line. So it's their best attempt to really hedge their exposure and maximize their profits from there. But let's take a hypothetical NFL point spread example to just illustrate kind of how a line can move from where the opening is to where it could be at the kickoff of the game. So let's say the opening line is for the Baltimore Ravens -3, that's -110, against the Dallas Cowboys +3, also at -110. So in this scenario, the Ravens open up as a 3-point favorite against the Cowboys on Monday morning. That -110 refers to the juice on the bet. We've talked about this a couple times now. If you haven't seen them already, be sure and check out this playlist right here with all of our Betting 101 videos. But in this case, a $110 bet would basically allow you to win back $100. So the game is set to take place on Sunday, as you know. We're thinking about placing a bet on the Ravens here, but we also decide to wait. And on Sunday morning, we find that the line is actually moved. So the Sunday line is actually Ravens -5.5 at -110 against the Dallas Cowboys at +5.5 at -110. So this same betting line 6 days later has moved 2.5 points. So if you still want to bet the Ravens point spread, now you're missing out on two very important key numbers in 3 and 4. The line movements just worked against you, essentially. So I'll describe what a key number is later in this video, but what caused this line to move? Like, the most common answer is that the sportsbooks are likely trying to put more money on the Ravens than they are on the Cowboys, and they just want to entice people to bet the other side. But the general rule of thumb is that just favorites attract more bets in general, especially from the general public. So there could have been a negative story about like the state of the locker room and the Cowboys or something like that in the media, but there could also be some sort of injury. Maybe a few key defensive players have been ruled out for the Cowboys. A lot of those things can affect the line throughout the week. Line movement usually happens as a result of one of the following three things. Either the money on either the sharp side or the public side is especially out of whack, news, injury reports. Those are the main things I'm looking for in terms of reacting to line movement. It's definitely an essential skill that you'll learn, that you'll get better at as you become a more experienced bettor. It gets easier to kind of react to this line movement as you get more experience at reading these lines and projecting where it could go. It will become second nature at some point, but you really got to develop that base of certain things to look for in the beginning. Simple question: when should you place your bets? Should you wait for line movement in certain scenarios? And honestly, for the NFL, I almost always try and place my bets early in the week before the market has a chance to really get efficient and stabilize, because there's just so much sharp money coming in the major sports, things like NFL, NBA, that things can become hyper efficient very quickly as some of that sharp money comes in from the pros. So timing is literally everything, especially in a sport, again, like NFL or NBA, where a single player's injury is worth multiple points, honestly, of a betting line, depending on who it is. For example, if an NFL quarterback is listed questionable or even doubtful throughout the week and he's later ruled out before kickoff, sometimes that line can move a full field goal or touchdown in the other direction pretty quickly. So keeping up to date with news, definitely the best way to fall into a plus EV bet. But if you have to move, you have to move quickly. So in the NBA, there's just this rise of teams utilizing rest for certain players like Kawhi Leonard, people talking about load management, that sort of thing. It's really led to some huge point swings from the opening betting line to the opening tip-off in regular season games. So just make sure that you're in a position to act quickly before that line moves if you want to bet NBA. Always remember that line movement is fluid. What looks like a great play in the morning could look like a disastrous one in the evening. So just always remember to understand that why a line is moving is much more important than if a line moves. So you got to be able to project those moving forward before placing that bet. Just have an idea what could happen, and then we react from there. That said, I know we've mentioned it before in other videos, but a dramatic line movement can also indicate just a bunch of sharp money on the other side. So a key factor in knowing is understanding what types of line movements may be happening based on those bets and the percentage of bets. So let's touch on the differences in sharp betting versus public quickly. So in sports betting, a sharp is referred to as an individual bettor or even just a group of bettors who are taken very seriously by sports books. So these bettors are wagering large sums of money on games they view as wagers as more as an investment rather than a casual bet. But in terms of sharp money, it's usually referring to the side of a betting line where the experts are on. And just knowing as a result what side the sharps are betting can give you just a valuable insight into projecting those line movements and where they could be going. On the other hand, the public, these are defined as bettors who are just casually betting on games. So sports books, odds makers, they're well aware of some of the tendencies from some of these casual bettors. A lot of times, just as a general rule, you see these guys betting on the favorites, betting on the overs for some of these popular teams. It's just something that becomes relatively predictable for these sports books. So they're going to provide a little bit more favorable lines for those scenarios in their favor just to entice more wagers from the public. So betting percentages, those are really key on what you need to be looking at because we want to see which side has a greater percentage of the bets placed based on the money, not necessarily the number of tickets. So we want to get an idea where the sharps are at. That's a great way to do it. Now, reverse line movement, that can be a completely different animal. So we actually have a whole video dedicated to it right here. Make sure you check that out after you finish this one. But reverse line movement, definitely an indicator you're going to want to be familiar with if you want to become a successful sports bettor. I told you guys we would circle back to something called key numbers, and they're definitely a lot more relevant in football than anything else. I guess to a lesser extent basketball than they are in other sports where there's fixed run lines, puck lines, whatever it is, and things like baseball and hockey. But key numbers in football, especially in the NFL, very important. So key numbers are the ones that are going to be hit more often at the end. In terms of differential, just things we should be focusing on, right? So given that a touchdown is worth 7 points, if we're going to count the extra point there, and also a field goal is worth 3 points, those are the key numbers in football, 3 and 7. So think about Super Bowl box polls. You're definitely happy when you found out you have one of those numbers because you know you have a better chance of hitting and just being successful in terms of what typically is going to be involved in a betting NFL point spread. Let's take a second to add a little bit of context to this. So a 3-point margin of victory happens about 14.5% of the time in the NFL. A 7-point margin of victory happens about 9.2% of the time. So if you bet an NFL underdog with the points, a line of plus 4.5, worlds better than a line of plus 2.5, given that the score differential of 3 or 4 points in an NFL game is much more probable than a score differential of 2. Knowing where the line is going to move is essential if you want to play these key numbers and get good prices on your bets. The last strategy I want to talk about today in terms of line movement is buying points. So what buying points allows is a bettor to move the point spread or the totals in their favor when betting either football or basketball. So when betting favorites, buying points would allow the bettor to take off a half point, a full point, even 1.5 points. So when betting an underdog, a bettor can add those types of points, half, full, 1.5, just on the other side, right? So sports books vary in the price of buying points, but in general, the rule of thumb is that a half a point is worth about an extra 10 cents in juice. Let's bring back in that NFL example we had earlier just to tie this whole thing together, but this time buying points. So again, the Ravens minus 5.5 at minus 120. What you would do is you would have to pay to buy that down to minus 5 points. So knowing that playing these key numbers is also crucial to buying points, the sports books also know this. So the sports books are going to charge actually about 25 cents as opposed to 10 cents when buying on or off of key numbers in the NFL like 3 or 7. So being able to project line movement will help you buy points in certain directions away from line movement as well. So for example, if you think the Ravens are going to start at minus 5.5 again, but they're going to creep up to minus 6 in your opinion, buying points in the opposite direction if you think it benefits you before that line moves, definitely going to increase the probability of it being a winning bet overall. If you enjoyed this video, be sure and smash that like button before you get out of here and consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. Make sure you check out these videos I have for you right here, but also don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything else along the way. Be sure and check out our sports betting content at linemovement.com and all of our social media platforms at line_movement. I'll see you guys next time.